How many of you like being still? I'm not talking about sleeping. I'm not talking about becoming lazy in life. I'm talking about being still. Being still doesn't mean that you just sit quietly. Being still also doesn't mean that you do nothing in life. Being still means having a posture that puts complete trust and confidence in the Almighty God, and you surrender everything to Him and say, "Here I am. I am not afraid of anything. I owe it all to you. I'll give it all to you because you are my protector. You are my provider. You are my caretaker. You're my shield, my strength, my fortress," and all that. Being still means no matter what happens to me in my life, no matter what comes knocking at my door, at what hour of the day or night, I won't be afraid. That is what being still means. I'd like to give you a quick story before I move on. Circuit riders were preachers back in the 1700s and 1800s who would ride from church to church and hold service. There were more churches than preachers in that day, and a circuit rider would travel from congregation to congregation. One circuit rider was out riding one afternoon and came upon a man out working in his field. Thinking to start a conversation and invite the man to the church, the preacher called out, "Fine day, isn't it?" "It's fine for you," the man replied. "All you have to do is ride around on that horse, thinking about God all day long, while I have to sweat here in this field and then walk home afterward. I don't think it's right you should have things so easy while I have to work so hard." The preacher responded, "You're right. You do work hard in the fields, and I admire that. But you need to realize that the kind of work I do is a work of different kind." "Yeah, sure," the man replied. "But it's not really work. All you do is ride around thinking about God all the time. That's not hard." "Oh, but it's harder than you think," the minister answered. And then a thought occurred to him. "I tell you what, just to prove to you how difficult it can be to think about God, if you can think about God and nothing else for 1 minute, I'll give you my horse." "You can't be serious," said the farmer. But the preacher assured him he was. "You're on," said the man, and immediately he sat down in silence. 10 seconds went by, 20 seconds, then 25 seconds. About then, the farmer looked up at the minister and said, "Does that include the saddle?" All the man had to do to get that horse was say nothing. All he had to do was to think about God and nothing else for 60 seconds. But he couldn't do that. "Be still and know that I am God." Psalms chapter 46, verse 10. That sounds like God is asking us to be still, just be quiet in His presence and know that He is God. But just like that farmer, there are a lot of people having a hard time doing that. I have taken this excerpt from the life group series that we are going to do next. And there's a book that comes with that, written by the author, Pastor John Mark Comer. It's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Historically, but universally accepted modern Western lifestyle is largely the result of 3 groundbreaking inventions: the clock, the light bulb, and the iPhone. All those who have iPhones, you never thought it was coming to you, right? The clock, the light bulb, and the iPhone. The clock in 1370, the first public clock was set up in Germany. Historians popularly point to that moment as the turning point when the world shifted from natural time to artificial time. Previously, people awoke with the sun's rising and went to bed with its setting. There was a rhythm to life, with longer days in the summer and shorter days in the winter, which I assume is how people made it through German winters before central heating. They mostly slept through it. As of 1370, when people started managing their time artificially, time shifted from being a limit governing our lives to a resource used according to our individual agendas. Number 2, the light bulb. In 1879, Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, which, among other things, cut way back on our sleep time. Prior to the light bulb, the average American slept 10 hours a night. With the increased potential for human productivity, technology took off. By 1960, central air conditioning and heating, microwaves, dishwashers, and laundry machines were common in the American homes. Around that time, sociologists commonly started making predictions about what human life would look like by the time you and I are living in today's world. And pretty much everyone was on the same page. They all predicted that there will be a dramatic increase in leisure and ease of life. A Senate subcommittee in 1967 jointly predicted that by 1985, the average American would work 22 hours a week for 27 weeks a year because of all the leisure time this new technology would free up. In reality, the average time people spend on leisure has decreased since the 1980s. Technology has continued to advance and save us time. They got that part right. What they misjudged was how we would use it. We've spent that time on other things than deep rest. Now, coming to all the Apple iPhone guys or ladies, how have we used that time? Well, when Apple released the first iPhone in June 2007, they gave us a tracking device for that very data. A 2016 study found that the average iPhone user touches their phone 2,617 times a day. Staring at their phone screen for 2.5 hours over 76 sessions. A more recent 2019 study discovered that in just 3 years, the figure had more than doubled to over 5 hours a day. Instead of slowing down and harnessing technology to free up leisure time, we now suffer from what mental health professionals call hurry sickness. A behavioral pattern characterized by continual rushing and anxiety. We all keep rushing here and there. In a society that prizes efficiency and productivity above all else, that uses time like a tool rather than a limit. Hurry isn't an occasional necessity, it's now the new normal. Be still. It sounds simple, isn't it? But it's not simple as it sounds. The Christian philosopher Dallas Willard was once asked, "What do I need to do to be spiritually healthy?" How many of us ask that question in our own life? We all have this desire. I want to become spiritually healthy in my life. What should I do? And there was one who asked this Christian philosopher the same question. After a long pause, he offered this, which is now the famous response: you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. If you and I have to grow spiritually stronger in our life, we have to ruthlessly eliminate hurry. According to Willard, Hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. Michael Zegarelli of Messiah University did a 5-year study of 20,000 Christians in the United States and identified busyness as the number one distraction from life with God. Busyness, not business, our busyness. He summarizes his own research with this great conclusion. It may be the case that Christians are assimilating to a culture of busyness, hurry, and overload, which leads to God becoming more marginalized in Christians' lives, which leads to a deteriorating relationship with God, which leads to Christians becoming even more vulnerable to adopting secular assumptions about how to live, which leads to more conformity to the culture of busyness, hurry, and overload. And then the cycle begins again. Psalms chapter 46, verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. This proves to be a challenging task for many of us in this day and age. How can one be still? And what does it mean to be still? The English word still is actually translated from the Greek. It's called Rafa, not the Rafa that you see on Instagram these days. It's R-A-W-F-A-W, Rafa. The meaning of this word Rafa is sink or relax. The way it's used is either you sink or you relax. Let me give you a scripture reference for that. Judges chapter 8 verse 3. But Gideon replied, what have I accomplished compared to you? Aren't even the leftover grapes of Ephraim's harvest better than the entire crop of my little clan of Abiezer? God gave you victory over Oreb and Zeb, the commanders of the Midianite army. What have I accomplished compared to that? When the men of Ephraim heard Gideon's answer, their anger subsided. You see the word usage here? The way they spoke, the way that Gideon spoke to the ones who came to have a fight with him, to argue with him, to pursue something, a grudge or whatever that is, they were trying to fight with Gideon, and Gideon gives them an answer. When he gives that answer, the anger in them subsides. Being still means letting go of what you struggle with. Nehemiah chapter 6 verse 9. For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking their hands will drop from the work and it will not be done. But now, O God, strengthen my hands. This was a case where when Nehemiah came back to Israel to build the walls of Jerusalem, Tobiah and his friends, they came together to try and scare Nehemiah and his people. And they use all kinds of tactics. In fact, they go as far as to say that in the days when Nehemiah was under the subjection of a foreign king, Tobiah says, you guys are building this wall, you guys are building your temple, and I heard that you've also appointed a king. They didn't. But he's putting words into his head or writing a letter saying, this is what we are hearing about. And when the king gets to hear, the actual king gets to hear that you have done this, they would kill you. They did that so that they can drop everything that they did. See the word used here? It's leaving everything that you have been doing. I'll come back to why this all, what this all means. 2 Samuel chapter 4 verse 1. When Ishbosheth, Saul's son, heard that Abner had died at Hebron, his courage failed and all Israel was dismayed. The word courage failed, which means that all that I was putting my trust in at this point, because that trust is lost and I can no longer be safe, I have sunk in my courage. The way we should understand this word is letting go of the trust you have in your strength or power. The strength that you have been thinking that I am strong. When I speak to some people and the conversations go around which say, I don't want to look weak in front of others, which means that they are feeling they are very strong. And most of the time they use this in the situation where they want to cry, they want to let their emotions out, but they don't want to do that because others will feel that I am weak. I don't want them to feel that I'm scared. I don't want to feel that I'm not capable of. So I want to show what I am capable of. And this word means you let go of the trust you have put in yourself, in your strength or your power. And you completely surrender to God because you're outnumbered, or you're overpowered, or you feel you're too small for this job. Whatever the reason is, you have made up in your mind, and these raging storms that come crashing at you every single time, and they prove difficult and challenging to you, and you will no longer find strength to fight your own battles. You be still and know that He is God. This sickness is eating me up, and I can't fight it anymore. This relationship is exhausting, and I'm losing my strength each day fighting for it. This financial burden is too heavy for me to carry. I don't know how to approach this. These accusations against me are consuming me, and they are turning my anxiety into a reality. We all face such mounting battles in one or more areas of our lives, and we've given up after putting up a strong face for some time now. You might probably put up this face for a season, but after a season, there comes a day that you give up, that you can no longer fight, that you lose all your strength, and you don't know where to go. Be still is not a mantra that you and I can recite. It is rather a command that needs to be followed. When God says be still, and if you go your own way against His command, you would have to fight your own battle, which means you're not allowing God to come into your section of your life, into the part of your life that you are struggling with and you need help with. This morning, I'd like to bring to your attention a very familiar story from the Bible that we have heard over and over again from our childhood. And I hope this will help us to learn and practice the aspect of being still. Exodus chapter 14, if you have your Bibles, turn them to Exodus chapter 14. I'm reading from verses 1. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of Pi Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, in front of Baal Zephon. You shall encamp facing it by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the people of Israel, they are wandering in the land, the wilderness has shut them in, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. And I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his host, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. And they did so. This is a scenario where the children of Israel have been waiting for their deliverance, to be freed from slavery, from oppression, from all that they have gone through for the last 430 years. In fact, it can be said, and if you ask psychologists, they would say, the whole mindset of an entire generation has changed. They can no longer think for themselves anymore. For a very small fight, they would go back, they would retreat into their shell. Such is their mindset at this point. And now they got deliverance on that night, miracle after miracle that God performed. For 10 miracles He performed, the last was the greatest, and they had their deliverance all those 10 times. And now the final one comes where they can walk freely from their captivity once and for all. All they have to do is just cross over. But you see how God orchestrates things. Sometimes we feel the situations in our lives are because of what we did or what somebody else did. But what we don't understand is the larger perspective of how God orchestrates certain things in our lives. Maybe sometimes they are to teach us, but sometimes they're also to teach the enemy where he or she should be. Over here, if you ask geographically or if you ask people a good route that they can take, probably there was an easier route they could have taken. But God says, I am going to bring you to a place and I want you to camp there because my job is not yet finished with Pharaoh. Not with you, with Pharaoh. I want to show my glory to him. I want him to see of who I am. Maybe he's thinking in his heart, because the loss of his son, he's grieving at the time and he gives up all that power and says, just get out from here. And Moses and his people just leave. But few days later, God hardens Pharaoh's heart. And the Lord hardened, verse 8, the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the people of Israel while the people of Israel were going out defiantly. How were they going? Defiantly. The Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them and encamped at the sea by Pi Hahiroth in front of Baal-zephon. Where did God lead the children of Israel to encamp? Pi Hahiroth. And after God hardened the heart of Pharaoh, where did he lead them to? They all came to Pi Hahiroth. They have actually encamped in front of the children of Israel. The enemy is sitting right in front of you, only a few miles apart. And God is there. He's saying, I am the one who's rescuing. You don't have the strength to do that. Because if you see the verses down, you would understand the psychology of the Israelites back then, the mindset that they had when they came out of this slavery. Verse 10, when Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their hands, lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians are marching after them, and they feared greatly. And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. What did they do? What did they do? They cried out to the Lord, which means they prayed to the God they believed in. And immediately, verse 11, it says, they said to Moses, like it's more like I'm trying and crying out to God and saying, God, where are you? I need your deliverance. I need healing. I need breakthrough in my life. And immediately in verse 11, it says, they said to Moses, they're turning to Moses who's here and saying, is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? Look at their juxtaposition. Like they have turned to God and asked God for help, and right then they turn around and question the one who's leading them out. Don't we do that all the time? We ask God, we go to prayer, we go to God in prayer, we pray day and night, but our words don't come out the way that we prayed, do they? We ask everything to God and then we question everything that God is doing in our life. Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Is not this what we say to you in Egypt? Leave us alone that we may serve the Egyptians, for it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. You see how easily they are retreating back to their slavery. Miracle after miracle God has performed in front of them. They have seen it right in front of their eyes. And it is not limited to a locality. The entire Egypt saw who God is. The entire church witnessed what God did with Kashima. But where is our faith when trials come and hit us? What do we do with that faith when difficulties strike our home? When relationships are on the verge of breaking? When children don't listen to us? What do we do? And Moses said to the people, "Fear not, stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord." Fear not, stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord. It looks like a pep talk. Fear not, stand firm. There's a whole crowd, almost 6 lakh people, shouting at Moses and telling him, "Are you out of your mind that you got us here? We could have easily been their slaves and had all the good food that we needed. I could have easily given up into that thing that would have kept my position properly, stable. I could have easily lied and got my way through. I could have easily cut the corners and did this so that I could have saved my job, my relationship, whatever that is." It is not easy to be a Christian. And more importantly, when trials and when struggles, when tribulations come, when storms hit our lives, it becomes difficult to stand. And in all that chaos, Moses tells them, "Fear not, stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be," what should they do? Silent. The urge for me to fight my battles is so much. If somebody snaps at me, I want to snap back. If somebody pulls me up, I want to give them a slap. If somebody accuses me, I want to bring out all that they did to me or the wrongs they do. When the Lord begins to fight your battles, you are required to be silent, because it's not your battle anymore. It is the Lord who fights your battle. The victory is not yours. The victory is His. But you can share in that victory. You can rejoice in that victory. You can be happy in that victory. What happens when you submit yourselves to God and say, "God, I will remain silent no matter what"? Be still is scary, because it takes away all the privileges that you hold to yourself. It takes away all the pride you hold. It takes away all the ego that you have carried all this far. It takes away who you are as a person to the most. You might be looked down in the world. You might be abused at times. You might be looked down by people that you call your friends. No matter what it is, when you are still, when you surrender yourself to God and say, "God, you fight the battle," regardless of what people think, victory comes to you. Fear not, stand firm, see the salvation of the Lord. Who's going to fight my battle then? Our fears are generally based on this term that most of the software folks use: what if, right? What if? Our fears are based on the what ifs more than the actual situation. Our minds race through different scenarios. Maybe it has subsided now, but what if they take a different approach and attack me? Brother, thank God, I praise God, all those things at my office have been sorted out, but I still have this doubt. What if they use this at a later point? It's not your battle. What if someone notices my weaknesses and takes advantage of it? I don't want anyone to see me cry. I don't want anyone to see me weak. What if they see me weak and then they take advantage of that? It's not your battle. For some people, it is our fears that push us further down into our sinful habits. Because we hold them dear to us, we don't want anybody to see who we are. We put a facade in front of us. We want people to see us smile, all happy. On a Sunday morning, we come, we greet people. And Monday to Saturday, we struggle because we don't want anybody to see a weakness. That is a battle that you have to fight, but it is not your fight, it is God's fight. You need to surrender that to Him. Oh, I'll wake up in the morning at 6 a.m., I'll do this, I'll do that. You can do all of that, but still, you will have to submit it to God and say, God, here's my battle. Please fight it for me. Fear of being isolated, fear of being picked upon, fear of breaking your trust. The Israelites have witnessed God's supernatural power on display time and again. And not too long ago, it was just a while ago, maybe a week, maybe a month, that's all they took, or maybe 2 days or 3 days. They came out of the last plague that afflicted the Egyptians, and they come here and sit in front of the Red Sea. Yet their hearts sank when they faced their enemy one more time. Maybe their fears returned. They knew their enemy too well. They didn't know their God. That's our struggle too. We know our weaknesses too well. We know our struggles too well. We know people so well. How much do we know about our God? The God who calls us to be silent, to be still, to not fear or fret. How much do we know about Him? Maybe their fears return because they knew their enemies too well, but have lost touch with the sovereign God who promised their deliverance 430 years ago. They've lost touch with Him. And our lives are no different. We've spoken of His greatness and the miracles that happened in our life. If I have to sit across you and ask you, or you would have to ask me, we would talk about God's greatness and goodness. We are great about talking about it. We can recount miracle after miracle. Yet when a new trouble knocks at our door, we become anxious. We keep running. Our first thought is, who should I go to, or what sort of help should I seek for this trouble of mine? And even if someone were to remind us of the victories we had because of God's mighty power, we'll come up with reasons to prove that this is a new struggle, or this is different from the ones I've experienced in the past, and I don't think God can help me in this. To be still would mean that I no longer trust my own strength. I no longer trust my own logic, my ability, and even myself. I have to let go of that ego I hold. But I place my trust in the God who knows me too well and knows my situation even better. Being still comes with practice. If you look at the Israelites, they didn't behave any better right after they crossed the Red Sea. However, they slowly learned to depend on God's strength and power. Battle after battle, God kept teaching them, it's not in your hands. I will fight it for you. You see Gideon's story, you will notice that only 300 men went there to fight, and they didn't even carry a sword to fight. They were asked to just carry the pitcher and a torch. It's more like me giving a candle to the Indian army and saying, go fight your enemy. In your real mind, in your sense, you would say that's foolishness. But that is how God deals with us. He says, just relax. This fight is not yours. I can fight your battle. The Lord will fight for you, and you have to be only be silent. The Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, and the people of Israel may go through the sea on dry ground. And I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they shall go in after them, and I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his host, his chariots and his horsemen, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I have gotten glory over Pharaoh and his chariots and his horsemen. What are you crying to me for? Move forward. Oftentimes we get stuck in our troubles that we don't have life any longer. We keep complaining about it so much that we don't do life anymore. Some people get stuck in their bedrooms. Some people get stuck in their homes. Some people get stuck in their life, in their jobs, or anywhere that is. They don't want to move forward. And God is saying, no, I want you to move forward in life. I want you to do how you do life regularly. Because I am fighting your battles. You don't have to stop. You keep moving forward. Being still doesn't mean that you stop moving ahead in life. It doesn't mean I sleep and become lazy in life. I move on and carry out my daily routine. It means that I no longer handle the struggle or face this battle with my own plans. You don't have to devise a plan to get out of that situation. You leave it to God and say, God, you take care of it. I will move. I don't let my frustrations take over my conversations. Just because I'm frustrated, I cannot talk to people well. No, let that frustration be. Give it to God and say, God, I am frustrated. Please help me to have sane mind. Have good conversations with people. I don't let my anger decide my behavior towards others. I don't allow resentment to crush me down and stop my conversations, because I place my trust in God. By looking at the life of Jesus, who left us an example of the possibility of being still in this human body, you and I can become his disciples by following his footsteps. The way Jesus carried his life on earth is the greatest example that you and I can live. Even when there was a lot of ministry that was taking place, at the beginning of his ministry, he goes out into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights. If you have to take a work break for 40 days and 40 nights, the first question that will come to you is, who will take care of your payments? Who will feed you? What about that thing that is left pending? We all have questions that keep revolving in our lives. And if we look at Jesus and follow his footsteps, we will let go of the hurriness that we have accustomed our lives to. Hurry is the great enemy of the spiritual life. Why? Because hurry kills love. Let me repeat that. Hurry is the greatest enemy of the spiritual life. Why? Because hurry kills love. Hurry hides behind anger. It hides behind agitation. It hides behind self-centeredness, blinding our eyes to the truth that we are God's beloved, and she is my sister, he is my brother. Hurry takes away the love that we have for others. God has to break our attachments to the world so we can truly love the world. God has to break our attachments to people who feed our egos so we truly see others, know others, and welcome others. The place where this work happens is silent prayer. You don't have to pray out loud for people to hear. The prayer is actually going to God. It's not for people. If you were given an opportunity and you have to pray, as much as possible, keep the prayer simple and short in front of people. But when you go back into your closet, make that prayer as long as you can, because your audience is always God. It is God who has to hear your prayer, not the people who can appreciate your ego. Wow, you sang so well. Wow, you preached so well. You're eloquent. You're so great. You smile so well. All are good compliments. But if you carry ego in your life, you will allow those comments to feed your ego, and you can no longer love people the way Christ loves. Let me conclude with this story. CJ was an alcoholic but was sober for a few months now, and he owed his sobriety to Alcohol Anonymous, a group that helps alcohol addicts to find freedom from their struggle. Although many of such groups have a lot of God language in it, which means these programs talk about a supreme being who helps them overcome their struggles. However, CJ doesn't believe in a higher power or a divine being. He says, I want to get sober, I'm committed to the program, but I'm out on God. Don't misunderstand me. I'm in for everything else, but please don't try to talk me into some cosmic therapist to help me overcome my addiction. On a cold winter November, two men, Owen and CJ, drive deep into Brooklyn, New York and arrive at the Coney Island Boardwalk. They leisurely walk onto the beach and sit down on the sand next to each other. They begin to scan the expanse in front of them as the cold wind whips against their faces and cuts through their jackets. Both remain silent for a full 2 minutes before Owen breaks the silence with a question. See anything here more powerful than you? CJ hesitates and then slowly responds, yeah. Great, Owen said. Start there. When you think about yourself as the greatest, as the strongest, as the powerful person, when you think of yourself bigger, you make the God in you smaller. You don't give God the reverence that you have to give. You don't give God the space that He needs to work in our lives. Begin in a space where you know there is a supreme God who works in our lives. Begin in a space where He can control the chaos in our lives. What is it that you struggle with? What is it that you're facing right now? What challenges are you experiencing in your life that you can no longer fight your battles? I've tried all that I can, but I cannot do anything. Let's take a moment. Everybody, if you can close your eyes and bow your heads. Take this space and reflect on your own life. God, this is where I am. This is where I am struggling with. And your word says that you can fight my battles. Your word says you are the one who brings me into victory. And I want to taste that victory in my life, in my situation, in my family, in the space that I have been hurting. I did all I could in my strength and I failed. Help me.